Welcome back, football fanatics, to the First and 10 Club. With me, your host, Mark D. Week 5 is in the books. Drake finally scored a touchdown, as I predicted. Elliott goes off, but because of a hefty cost. And the Vikings and Seahawks play an exciting game, but fall short of 70 points. I went 2-2 last week with my show picks, but this week was packed with upsets and some crazy outcomes, and there's still one to go tonight, the Buffalo Bills versus the Tennessee Titans in what has become known as the COVID game. So, without further ado, let's start recapping week number 5 in the NFL. We're going to start with the Thursday night game and the rematch between Tom Brady and Nick Foles, although both on different teams. So, what did we get out this week, out of this game? Well, what we found out was Tom Brady, at this point in his career, needs weapons to survive. I know he had Mike Evans in that game, but I think it was just very painfully obvious that he didn't have a big enough complement. I think he saw that last year with New England also, that if he doesn't have the weapons and skill players around him, he's really going to struggle at times. And I don't want to take away from Chicago. Chicago's defense is playing at an extremely efficient level and came to play. But Chicago ended up, pulling out the win against Tampa Bay on this one. I think way too much is being made about him thinking it was, third down when it was really fourth down. And maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I have a hard time believing that. It's just fun to make fun of him. When a guy's as good as Tom Brady is, you have to nitpick on where you pick fault. But who doesn't deserve credit for this game is Nick Foles. Look, okay, he gets the win and a win's a win, but it's more of what I said. If you watch the game, Foles looked horrible. I'm talking horribly overthrowing players. There was quite a few times he just did not look to be on the same page with his offensive weapons, whether it was the wide receivers or the tight ends. And I'm really concerned that Foles is actually going to limit the offensive potential of the Chicago Bears, which for fantasy purposes, we don't like hearing the word limit. So Chicago gets the edge there. Tops off to them. I really thought Chicago was going to be a far worse team this year. Here they sit with only one loss. I still just don't have faith in them. Now maybe that changes over time. I still think they're a team that's kind of pretending. I haven't seen that dominant win that makes me think, wow, this team's a force. So moving on to teams that are just going in opposite directions right now. Carolina versus Atlanta. All right, so one, I think you learned two things from this game. The Panthers don't need to rush Christian McCaffrey back, and I don't think they should. Mike Davis is getting it done. Dare I say they are playing more efficiently with Mike Davis than they did with CMC, and I think they need to figure that out when he does get back. Bridgewater is being very protective of the ball. They're not turning the ball over. They're making plays when plays need to be made. Now, with all that being said, they got to play Atlanta this week, whose defense is literally a peewee team. The Falcons' defense is really, really bad, and it's so surprising to me considering, their head coach was a vaunted defensive, coordinator. You expect them to be a more defensive team than an offensive team. And it's not the first time I've said it, but the Falcons are just flat out underachieving. And what happens when teams underachieve? Well, Dan Quinn and the GM have been canned. That's the second head to roll in the coaching ranks in this very difficult, very challenging 2020 COVID season. So here we are at week 5 of the NFL season. We already have 2 coaches who have lost their jobs, and Dan Quinn and O'Brien. And I hate to say it, but I think there's going to be more to come. I don't know if they'll happen in season, but I think there's 3 other coaches that are very, very much on the hot seat. And one of those we're going to talk about right now as Carolina gets the win against Atlanta. And then we're going to go to the Arizona-New York Jets game. I just don't get it. How does Gase have a job yet? Maybe I'm wrong in saying that I think he's on the hot seat. Maybe he's not. I don't know what type of blackmail he has over the ownership of this team. I don't get it. You can't produce results. Your team looks hapless. Your team looks like crap. They don't look prepared week in, week out. I don't care what excuses you want to come up with. It still comes back to coaching. I just don't understand how he is still there. I don't. This is beating a dead horse. I talk about it every week, but the new theme of this is going to be Week 5 in the NFL. Adam Gase has survived somehow yet again. Ugh. The Cards get back on track this week, which was great. And I mean, that's a good team to get back on track with is the New York Jets. If you can't, then you have much bigger problems. But Murray looked phenomenal. Dropped a hell of a dime to D-Hop. Both running backs scored, Edmonds and Drake, which is great. Would have been nice, if Drake would have gotten both of them. I want to know what happened to Kenyon Drake from the end of last season. They don't even involve him in the offense like they did last year. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see how that develops, the play calling there. Does that start to kind of come to fruition towards the back half of the season? I was really excited for Drake to finally get the opportunity to be an every down back, and he's just leaving us all disappointed. For the Jets, it's so hard to say anything good about the Jets. But I will say this much. Jamison Crowder is an absolute beast, especially if you're in a PPR format. You're talking most people, you're drafting him in the late to end rounds of your draft, and that is just an absolute steal. If he is on the field, he is just PPR gold. Put up a crazy week this week, so you got to love that. That's about the only good thing for the Jets, though. Bell came back, didn't really mean anything. I don't think it's going to. I know Beckham was out for this game, but it's just the Jets. Like I said at the beginning of the year, I didn't want to be in on them. I didn't want to have any shares of them, and I don't. So Arizona gets the win there. They get things righted for week number 5. I'm talking about getting things righted and showing that teams are human. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Las Vegas Raiders. This was in Arrowhead, which I understand it's different with COVID. You don't have the fans there and everything, but it's still, tough play. You got to love division games. But all credit goes to the Raiders for this one. Ruggs absolutely changes the game for the Raiders. You have to respect his speed and his ability, and that just opens things up. It opens things up for Jacobs. It opens things up for underneath routes to Waller and some of the other players. And Carr looked really good in this game. Absolutely really good. I think Kansas City is just missing some pieces in the secondary when it comes down to it. I think that's a big thing. Kansas City is human. And one of the things that I'm just curious to know is, and I talked about this in one of my earlier shows, but what has happened to the Kansas City running game? And I think this goes back on Bieniemy and Reed, and as much as I love them, but either one of two things is happening here. Either the coaching is not getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved enough, and I get you have all these other weapons around there, so you think you don't have to, but a good running game is still a very valuable piece to an effective offense. So either the coaching staff isn't getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire involved enough, or Clyde Edwards-Helaire might not be the golden gem that everyone thought he was. Again, we talked about it. It's very easy for him when he goes between the tackles to get stepped up. Time's going to tell, but it's an interesting situation there. It really is. So moving on here, Las Vegas. Props to you to beat the Giant for the time being. We'll see. I'm sure that's not going to destroy Kansas City. They will bounce back, but a great building block for the Raiders. So, moving on to the Battle of Pennsylvania in our recap, that was the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. And I got to give the Eagles credit for starters because they have an absolutely decimated offensive line. I think they are down 4 starters now. And their wide receivers are a bunch of no-name players. And they really kind of hung in this one for the most part. What this game really came down to was a battle of kind of two unproven wide receivers. One was rookie Chase Claypool of the Pittsburgh Steelers out of Notre Dame, and Fulgham, God's gift to the Eagle, according to Reese. I don't know about God's gift, but wow. These two wide receivers, man, they just went off. Now, here's the interesting thing about it. Fulgham has actually been around for quite some time in the league. He's bounced from a couple of different teams. He's been on practice squads. He's never really been able to stick. He's never been able to really get an opportunity, whatnot. Well, he's gotten the opportunity with Philadelphia, and it's very curious to see if he does stick this out and does build on this. I'm a little more hesitant with Fulgham in terms of what I think his future potential is going to be. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but Ertz is just not producing. You have Goddard. There's war there. You're going to have other players come back from injury. I just don't know that Fulgham becomes a stalwart piece of the Philadelphia Eagles offense. So if you're looking to pick up, in terms of fantasy purposes, if you're looking to pick him up, yeah, okay, that's absolutely. He's probably available in every single fantasy league out there, unless you're talking some super super deep leagues. But I don't know that I'd break the bank, especially if you're talking fab budget. I wouldn't break the bank for him. I like I said, I just don't know that he continues to put up numbers like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Where I would break the bank is Chase Claypool. The Chase Claypool thing is interesting because unless you're in a dynasty league, I think you're kind of starting to see Pittsburgh, and this happens with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh tends to just recycle players. It's very rare that Pittsburgh re-signs their skill players. You've seen it with wide receivers in the past. You've seen it with running backs. That's not where they invest their money, and I think they've done a great job of setting it up that they're not going to re-sign Juju Schuster. I think he will be let go in the offseason. And I think as the season goes on, you're going to see kind of less and less work for him. The only thing that's benefiting for him right now is the fact that Deontay Johnson is battling some injuries. But I think the future at wide receiver for the Steelers is going to be Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Washington. And Claypool, I think, is the real deal. He is, if you have fab, that is somebody that I would put, a good chunk of money in. I'd make a pretty hefty bet. It depends on your situation, but if you're in need of a wide receiver, I don't think that's going to go away because he proves to be, he's a different component than the other wide receivers. Now, with that being said, Philadelphia, Schwartz, what you just, because he's the rookie, you don't cover him? You put a linebacker on him? I mean, in all honesty, his 4-touchdown day, he deserved every bit of it. But it goes back on Philly on this one. Like, you have to cover him. And they didn't. I mean, there's times the guy's just wide open. I mean, you made it easy for him. Another thing to talk about, too, Miles Sanders had a pretty good statistical day. But please keep in mind that is fool's gold. He had, I think it was 11 carries for just under 100 yards. But 70, I think it was like 82 yards. I don't have the stats right in front of me. But keep in mind that is partially because of one run. It was 75 yards. So the running game was not working for Philadelphia yesterday. So that, obviously played a role into it too. But Pittsburgh beats Philly. Still only had that one win and 3 losses now and 1 tie. But hey, the NFC East is still wide open. Talking about NFC East being wide open, let's go to the LA Rams versus the Washington football team. I don't even know where to start here. So one, a couple of things. I do need to clear a few things up. One, I am not a Dwayne Haskins truth or lover. Like, I'm not all on board for Dwayne Haskins. That's not why I was upset last week. Why I was upset was the way the team has handled the Dwayne Haskins situation. I think there's been a lot of lip service. And as a fan of the Washington football team, you just have to understand I'm very frustrated with that. Like, just give it to us straight. If what I'm hearing coming out of Washington was Dwayne is not preparing, things like that, then just come out and say that. Say that we gave him an opportunity to be a leader of this football team and we don't like what we're seeing right now. We want him to take a step back. Like, there's so many ways to do this rather than this whole, that. And the other part that I'm upset with is at the beginning of this year, Coach Rivera and the front office said that it wasn't about winning this year. It was about building for the future. It wasn't about wins. It was about seeing what we have and developing players. And I was actually really excited about that. Maybe I'm one of very few fans. I'm not that super excited to win the division this year just to win the division. Our team, eh, our team is way behind the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys. So, okay, we win the division this year, and maybe that is a stepping stone. You get to play, and every year is a new year, and I understand all that. But throwing away developmental prospects and putting this all on Dwayne Haskins. Okay, so here's what it comes down to. If Dwayne did the things that he did, he should have been benched. Absolutely. If he bragged about his stats to the coach, that's a big knock on you. And if he ends up being traded because of that, so be it. But trying to act like this team is losing because of Dwayne Haskins, that is a joke. And I think that was proven this past Sunday. Allen looked okay. He moved the ball around a little bit. He had some escapability, and God knows we needed that because Wes Martin is absolute garbage. Aaron Donald, like I said, basically was going to pick him up, throw him around, and do whatever the hell he wanted. And he did. 4 sacks on the day. The scariest part about this was Allen got knocked out of the game, and Alex Smith came in. And I'm so happy for Alex Smith. His story, I've said this over and over again, if this is the first time you're watching the videos, if you have not watched ESPN's Project 11, which is the story about Alex Smith's injury and his comeback, do it. It's so inspirational. It's crazy to see what all happened. But he came out, he played offensive snaps. He got sacked 7 times. I believe it was 7 when it was all said and done. He should be comeback player of the year just because of that. And I come at me. I will argue it tooth and nail. He should be this year's comeback player of the year. However, I have never had such a horrible pit in my stomach. I was terrified for him. They kept showing his wife and his kids every time he get hit. And when he went into the game, and you can just see, I'm so glad he came out of the game healthy. I was really, really waiting and expecting for something bad to happen. And I'm not saying that I was hoping that. It was just a bad feeling. Our offensive line is garbage. Our secondary needs so much work, and it's not our corners, it's our safeties. I've said this for the past 4 years. Go back through my Twitter line feed. We need safety help, and we just keep ignoring it. We keep bringing in these aging veterans that really don't do anything for us, or we pick up a safety in the 6th or 7th round. For the love of God, we need to get a safety to fill in. We have no free safety. We haven't had a good free safety, in my opinion, since the tragic passing of Sean Taylor. And Sean Taylor wasn't even our free safety. Well, he played both roles. I mean, at times he played free safety when Landry was there, but he was more of an in-the-box safety too, but at least he could cover. We don't have that. Horribly bad angles. And somebody else posted too, Landon Collins. He's an in-the-box safety. What do you expect? You're right. Landon Collins, I'm not expecting to be this savior free safety in the middle of the field, but we have holes. All I'm saying is we have holes. We have a lot of holes. So, yeah, hats off. Aaron Donald, you had a great matchup. You ate. You played like a league MVP this week, but again, I want to see that every single week if you want me to consider you for a league MVP. But you had a hell of a week, 4 sacks. Just really, Sean McVay has that offense clicking again. I think the Rams are a very sneaky team to make a lot of noise, and I'm really interested to watch some of these division games against Seattle, particularly against Seattle. I think the Rams-Seattle games are going to be really interesting this year. So. Moving on to the other team from the Beltway, Baltimore versus Cincinnati. So here's the thing. Right before game time on Sunday, in a couple of social media platforms that I'm on with friends, I just had this gut feeling that Cincinnati was going to upset Baltimore this week. with the issues with Lamar Jackson and having not practiced. And I, I just had this kind of weird feeling that, okay, this is going to be the coming out game and whatnot. And I called it. I called it in a betting league I did. I took Cincinnati with the points. I called that Cincinnati was going to beat Baltimore. And this was literally, I think, maybe a half an hour before games started. And I was wrong. I was wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Cincinnati didn't even show up. Baltimore's defense that's the thing. Baltimore's offense didn't need to show up. The Baltimore defense just won that game. They could have kneeled down. They could have literally kneeled down. They could have done the Bobby Boucher defense. The offense could have gone out on the field. They could have kneeled every single play, turned it back over their defense, and won that game. Cincinnati, man, you got punched in the mouth. We'll see how you come back from that. I know you're a young team. I expected to better. That was horrible. And AJ Green, retire. If you don't want to be part of a team, if you want to stand around after an interception or you want to pout, that was horrible. That was a bad look, AJ. I know you're older. I know you're beat up and you battle injuries on a regular basis, but that was a bad look. You should not have any complaints, or you shouldn't have any confusion as to why you may be third on the depth chart now behind T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. All right. Houston and Jacksonville. We got this one right. Houston gets their first win. Watson goes off. Brandon Cooks has one of his boom or bust weeks, and definitely was a boom week. So it's curious to see if that kind of momentum stays with Houston and Romeo Crennel, the oldest coach to ever coach. I think he took that title away from Dick Vermeil. Didn't research it yet. Check into that. Houston played a really good game, as equally as Jacksonville. I know they got that big win in week 1, and people were really excited for what Minshew was doing, but I think that magic is fading. I think players are coming back down to earth a little bit. Robinson's looking like an undrafted rookie. I'm not saying he looks bad, but he was held in check. They've got some injuries stacking up on the defensive side of the ball, which is affecting them. And you have to start wondering at this point if Jacksonville is really trying to figure out is Minshew the future for them at quarterback or not, because it's looking like they're going to be at the top of the draft with the ability to select a future signal caller. And then, of course, too, you have to wonder, this is another coach that's, on the hot seat. Unless Jacksonville really makes some drastic improvements here and goes on some winning streaks, I have to think Jacksonville's coaches are different next year and changed. So it'll be curious to see kind of what goes on there. Moving on to one of the surprise games of this past week, which was the San Francisco 49ers versus the Miami Dolphins. And I didn't see anyone who picked Miami to win this game. And maybe that's bad on us because, Miami was a little bit healthier. But the interesting thing was Jimmy G was back. Garoppolo was back. And he shouldn't have been. He absolutely cannot plant on that back foot. His throws were off. And San Francisco just, decimated by injuries. The Dolphins came out and just jumped all over them. And Fitzmagic was back, at least this week. It's amazing to me. I know Fitzpatrick said that he understood he was a placeholder for Tua, but he is doing everything in his power to keep him off that field. He is fighting tooth and nail, and that's what I like about Fitzmagic. And I like him as a player. I root for him kind of as a player because he hasn't been that franchise quarterback really anywhere. He's been a journeyman. He's bounced all over the place, but he fights and he just keeps fighting, and he's not a bad solution to the quarterback position. And you know what? If they move on to Tua next year and he doesn't want to stay there as the backup, I could see him going somewhere else to be that stopgap till another rookie comes along. Or it's just an interesting storyline. I like following it. So hats off to the Miami Dolphins getting the win in San Francisco this week. Against San Francisco this week. Moving on to another aging quarterback who I am starting to feel I was very, very wrong on. Talking about the Cleveland Browns versus the Indianapolis Colts. And I do believe the Indianapolis Colts are in trouble. They're my Super Bowl pick. And This team is just not there. The defense has some key injuries with um, Darius Leonard being out. That definitely affects the defense pretty significantly. The secondary is riddled with injuries here. You have players going in and out of the game. Uh, and I thought Rivers, this could be his swan song. And really what it is I think he's hanging on just a little too long in the league. He looks like an aging quarterback. He looks like he's hit that cliff. His throws are not crisp at times. There's a reason he's getting picked off. He's not seeing the field like he used to. The offensive line is not playing like I expected either. It hurts Taylor's value. Now I'm not saying I'd bail on Taylor, but this definitely does cause a problem. Game script comes into play here. It just seems Indianapolis is going to be in a battle throughout the entire season. And it's very curious to see kind of what comes of this. With Tennessee coming up tonight and having to deal with all the COVID issues, again, you got to see how that kind of affects them. I understand they're undefeated, but I wouldn't say this division is, completely locked down as of yet. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out too. Um, Cleveland's clicking. They didn't have Chubb this week. Didn't seem to affect them too much. Another trick play. They got a big divisional matchup coming this week, so I'm very curious to see how they play against the Steelers. Uh, and the interesting thing there is going to be the one thing you have a really hard time doing against Steelers is running against them, and that has been the bread and butter for Cleveland. So it'll be interesting to see how OBJ fares in this game. This should be a smash spot for him. They've really had a hard time stopping wide receivers, and let's face it, if Fulgham can go off, Baker Mayfield, you should very easily be able to help OBJ go off this week. So now we're going to talk about the really interesting game of the week, and that's Dallas versus the New York Giants. And you know what? For so many reasons, look, clear and simple, Dallas wins this game. Okay, that's that part of the game. There's just a couple of things to talk about here, and we're going to start on the Giants side. One, the Giants are horrible. Um, the playmakers just aren't there. Daniel Jones is not getting it done. Thomas does not look like a top 5 pick. And I think the Giants might have missed on this one. He can get coached up and so forth and so on, but the offensive line for the Giants is bad. Daniel Jones is making bad decisions at this point. He has some mobility, and yes, they kept this game close, but in all honesty, this game was winnable for the Giants, and I don't know if the Giants. Now, don't get me wrong, they get to play Washington twice, so they get to play Philadelphia twice. So there's chances for the Giants to get wins, but they just don't look like a put together team right now. They really don't. Um, Dallas is in trouble though too. So Dallas's offensive line is struggling, and you kind of saw that a little bit on Sunday. And it's not like the Giants have this killer pass rush. Um, but the thing of it is with the Dak injury, which we're going to get to in a second, Andy Dalton is not this super mobile quarterback. Um, so there's just a lot to take in with this game, and it really is it's a domino effect because of the Dak Prescott injury. So Dak Prescott, if you haven't heard by this point, you've been living under a rock as an NFL fan. But like I said, I want you to be able to come here to kind of get that picture. Dak Prescott, compound fracture and dislocation of his right ankle, had surgery Sunday night. It went successful, but he is out for the season. So we're gonna when we get to the to run out the clock and the final kneel down, we're gonna talk about what this means for Dak moving forward. But prayers for him. Coming from a fan of the Washington football team and seeing what Alex Smith went through, these types of injuries are really devastating for players, and there should not be any. You shouldn't be making light of anything. It's even if you're not a fan of the Cowboys, cheering on somebody else's injury is bad juju. So prayers for Dak. I hope you have a smooth recovery and you can get back to your career. You definitely were an upcoming quarterback in this league. So what does this mean for Dallas? I'm not going to waste any more breath on the Giants. Sorry. What does it mean for Dallas? I don't know. One, you have the best backup in the NFL. That is for sure with Andy Dalton. And man, does that look like a genius move right now, signing him to be your backup. The best thing you have is you have 3 absolute stud wide receivers in Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Gallup. There was a Gallup sighting, and man, was there a sighting. 2 amazing catches for that game-winning drive from Andy Dalton. So it's going to be interesting to see there. I do think Zeke becomes more prevalent in the gameplay calls because I don't think you're going to see Andy Dalton's not Dak Prescott. It's plain and simple. So you're going to see a different approach there. On to the Sunday night game. I thought there'd be 70 points in this game. I think the weather kind of kept it down a little bit, to be perfectly honest. But I got the pick wrong. I got the call wrong for my bold predictions. But you had Seattle versus Minnesota. There's 2 things I really want to talk about here. First off, the Dalvin Cook injury. Monitor that. Madison is very rarely out there on the waiver wire, but obviously if he is, make sure you put a claim in for him. Make sure you go out there and get him. Not to say that Cook's going to miss any time. No, he went out with the I'm sorry, it was groin or hamstring. But he went out in the game. He came back. He ran 1 play. It didn't look like it affected him, but that was it. He didn't go back in the game. And maybe he didn't have to, but I will say this much. I think if Dalvin Cook is out there for that final play, I don't think Seattle wins this game. I think absolutely 100%. I think that Cook punches that into the end zone. So now, so Minnesota didn't win that game. It's a shame. Their season seems to be slipping away from them very quickly. Seattle, obviously, still undefeated and amazing. Russ just does his own thing. He has his way. But that's not what I want to talk about. So Seattle wins the game. What I want to talk about is how you get elite franchises. And there's 2 things. People are talking about how, Metcalf might be the next great elite wide receiver. We already talked about that the front runner in some people's minds for this year's MVP is Russell Wilson. Not enough has been said, or you need to understand. DK Metcalf was the 9th wide receiver taken in the draft last year. 8 wide receivers were taken before him. 8. He was at the very end of the 2nd round. Because we go back to metrics. And I've talked amongst my circles about this one. The combine and metrics drive me nuts. You're talking about how big your wingspan is, how big your hand size is. Sometimes you just have to look for football players. Watch the game film. So again, 8 wide receivers taken in front of DK Metcalf. You know who was taken after DK Metcalf? Terry McLaurin of the Washington football team. There's another wide receiver that seems to be an up-and-coming bright spot wide receiver. There's a lot of wide receivers that are in front of him that kind of have to leave you scratching your head. Not to pick on Philly, but J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I'm pretty sure Philadelphia would love to have Terry McLaurin or DK Metcalf right now. So, obviously your scouting departments don't always get it right, but there's a reason why Seattle is a dominant team. The other guy that's calling the shots for them, their signal caller, they had 5 quarterbacks taken in front of Russell Wilson because he was a little bit shorter. Man, metrics can be a bitch. So, watch the tape. That's all I'm going to say is, in my opinion, when I scout players, when I watch college, I'm not looking at what they do at the combine. I watch the tape. It's very different what you're doing in shorts and sneakers than when you have pads on and you're on a football field. So, last game of the week, well, the last game as of right now, New Orleans versus the LA Chargers. And Herbert, so close to his first win, his kicker lets him down in overtime, goes to overtime. New Orleans squeaks out the win, but it's far from a dominant force. Um, I think they're going to be better when Mike Thomas gets back. I really do. Stupid on his part, punching a teammate. Um, they can deal with that inside, but yeah, that's pretty much what it is. I don't think New Orleans is going to be the 100% force to be reckoned with that I think some people thought they would be in their last hurrah. And I think I'm not discounting Drew Brees. I just think the window is closing a little bit quicker than maybe he would have anticipated. And I don't know it's all his fault. I'm not saying it's him. I'm saying his opportunity with the team. Their secondary really is a problem right now. So I guess, again, we've said it again, but time will tell. So that's the week 5 games. We will talk a little bit. I'll give a little recap of the Tennessee Buffalo game, which is the last game for week number 5. It's being played on a Tuesday. Yeah, things are all kinds of crazy with COVID this year. Before you know it, we're going to be playing football every night of the week. And you know what? I'm okay with that. But it's time to run out the clock. So this week, or this episode for running out the clock, first thing I want to talk about is the Tennessee Titans, who played tonight versus the Buffalo Bills, and just the absolute shit show that has been created by the NFL in scheduling. And I'm sorry, this is an issue with the NFL. Like, they could have been better prepared for this COVID. If they thought they were going to get through the season without having COVID issues, shame on them. In my opinion, they should have extended the season out maybe 1 or 2 weeks and put built-in bye weeks in the middle of the season. And I'm talking full-blown bye weeks. So you play 6 games and there's a week off. You play another 6 games and there's a week off. It would have made things so much easier, but no, they didn't think that damn far ahead. So it's just stupid on their part. Think outside the damn box. But in terms of Tennessee, and the reports that are out there that these players had an illegal workout and that's what caused the second spike of testing positives and so forth and so on. I know they're doing everything they can to get this game in tonight. And, one of the penalties that I heard them kick around was Tennessee having to forfeit the game. And the reason that didn't happen was because, according to the agreement with this whole COVID thing, then there'd be no game checks for the Buffalo Bills. Okay, because there's no game. I get that, and I understand that that's a safeguard that was put in there to prevent any team from having to forfeit. I think that's bullshit. And in all honesty, it was very clear that there would be penalties, whatnot. So why not just do this? I think this is a real interesting and simple solution. Not only does Tennessee forfeit the game, and this isn't going to happen, obviously, but if it does happen down the road, whether it's any team, Tennessee, Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New England, whoever, if your team blatantly breaks protocol that causes the need for a forfeit, instead of getting fined by the NFL and paying the NFL, I think the team that causes the reason for the forfeit, in this case it would have been Tennessee, pays the game checks of the Buffalo Bills. Simple solution. Anyway, it's just my thought, and it doesn't matter now because, knock on wood, hopefully the game is played tonight. As of right now, all things are good. Next thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go back to the Dallas Cowboys and the Dak Prescott injury. So last night when the Dak Prescott injury happened, Tony Dungy made a comment regarding maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Okay. I'm going to go on the record here. I've never been a huge fan of Tony Dungy. However, the social media blast for him to be punished and needs to be removed. Okay, stop. Was it too soon? Yeah. Absolutely way too soon. But I completely understand where he's coming from. He's making commentary. It's his job. His job is to offer an opinion. And, okay, he chose his words poorly. But cut the guy a break. He wasn't saying that he wanted to see Dak Prescott get hurt. He was saying that he feels the strength in this team is Ezekiel Elliott, and maybe this becomes, excuse me, no COVID. Maybe this becomes a way that they get back to running the football and less about the quarterback position. Just last week, I said, I'm starting to wonder if this whole Dak Prescott stat explosion is because of the contract. So I get where he's coming from. Poor timing, but give the guy a break. And for the final kneel down, we are going to talk about Dak's future. So I've seen a lot of people, again, you got to love social media when things like this happen, who have said that, Dallas did Dak dirty. They didn't do Dak dirty. Stop. Okay. Look, Dak took a very, very expensive gamble. He played this year on the franchise tag. But it's not like Dallas didn't offer him a very, very generous contract. Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers on it, but it was around the terms of $33 million annually. $33 million. 105 guaranteed. It was plus $100 million guaranteed. Dak didn't want that. Dak wanted more. Okay. Look, he has every right to try and command whatever salary he feels is fair for him. But he took a gamble. He knows the type of game this is. It's not fair for people to come down on the organization to say that it's, his future, you ruined his future. And I hope Dak gets back. I really do. I hope he is able to rehab this. I hope he comes back and plays. He's a good young quarterback. I'm a fan of the NFL. Did he cost himself money? Yeah, probably at this point. He's probably not going to get the long-term deal at this point. He's probably going to get a short deal with Approve It. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what Dallas does here. Does Dallas let him walk? Not saying this happens, but what if Andy Dalton leads them deep into the playoffs? This is what happens. It's a reality of the NFL. Injuries happen. Bad things happen. So I feel for you, Dak. But you had a very, very generous offer on the table. One that would have set you up for life with more money than probably 90% of Americans see in their entire lifetime. And you scoffed at that because you wanted more. You took a gamble. You lost. I'm sorry. I feel bad for you. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. I wish you the best. I hope you recover. I hope everything gets back on track. I don't want to wish bad juju on anyone, especially when it comes to injury. So, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this week's show. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you click the subscribe button down below. Follow us so you don't miss any episodes. And tell your friends, share the video, help us get out there. And then come back on Thursday when we give you our picks, predictions, and bold choices. So, if you have any thoughts or opinions about what I said, please share them in the comments below. Find us on Twitter, First and 10 Club. I'm your host, Mark D. Let's go football.